This season has almost been one of the longest seasons in the history of Destiny 2, if not the longest. But guys, it's finally come to an end, which means as always, it's time to conclude our build playlist for this season. With this channel having over 100 build videos in the past year of Beyond Light, it's time to break it down to just 3. So in this video we'll be looking at the top 3 builds overall for Season 15, for which you should be using in Season 16 for the upcoming Destiny 2 Witch Queen expansion. As always, the builds shown here are what I personally think are the best builds from Season of the Lost and in order for endgame PvE. These builds will be adjustable and optimised for usage for the next season, or whichever season you're wanting to use them in, as they will not rely on specific seasonal mods, so you can make those slight adjustments to slot on any new mods you'll obtain through the seasonal artifact. And these builds featured here will be based on the new changes happening, like the Masterwork Orbs nerf. With Void 3.0 subclass changes coming, we will not be placing any Void builds in the top 3 to avoid complications with the changes coming into effect in Season 16. Now before we start, this video is being sponsored by Awaya. They offer cheap and reliable Destiny 2 silver, so if that's something you're interested in, see the link below along with my discount code, and if you missed my Season 15 prep guide video, be sure to check that out later, but for now, rate, comment, subscribe and share, and now let's start our top 3. Now firstly, before we start, if you like one of these build videos shown, or you want a full in-depth build setup guide for each during Season 15, then I'll leave a card on screen to those related builds so you can use it for the remainder of this season. Cards should pop up on screen at the start of each showcase to take you to those related videos that do use seasonal mods for Season 15. So if you do want to maximise the build's efficiency currently for Season of the Lost, you can do so by going to those separate videos linked, as they may have a few slight changes. Now starting off in 3rd place, we have the retraced Path of the Burning Steps build, featuring the use of solar rockets like Gjallarhorn. This build has a few slight changes than the original carded on screen, but the main purpose of this build is to enhance your solar weapons and abilities to add clear more effectively in endgame PvE. Now the reason this is in my top 3 is because you can almost insta-kill all champions in the game when you've mastered this build. The way you'd use this build in things like a master activity would be to first use your solar ability like a grenade or hammer, to get the first kill on a minor add. This will spawn a solar elemental well that buffs your weapon damage, while also increasing your ability damage after each kill, stacking up to a few times, to the point where your abilities can insta-kill all master minor adds in the game. You'll then use those elemental wells to buff your heavy weapon like a Gjallarhorn for a huge DPS increase. This will be combined with about 5 different buffs and debuffs all stacked together at once. So for your loadout, you want to use solar weapons. For Witch Queen and Season 16, I would recommend a solar scout rifle, auto rifle, SMG or bow, ideally with perks that can cause explosive damage like a Firefly. And then for your heavy weapon, I would use either a Gjallarhorn, 1K Voices, Sleeper or the Lament, or any solar rocket launcher. Your best option would be a Gjallarhorn, although you're not restricted to it. For the subclass, you will want to use the middle tree solar burning maul with a fusion grenade, but you can use the bottom tree as well, although middle tree will be more effective as it supplies you with more reliable ability DPS buffs that will be useful in endgame PvE, as you will get a hammer with roaring flames and the ability to regen health when picking it back up after using it. If you go with middle tree, which I recommend, you want to use the Path of the Burning Steps, but if you go with the bottom tree, you want to use Phoenix Cradle. Now Path of the Burning Steps, it will periodically grant you an escalating bonus to weapon damage from solar final blows, and the mods in no particular order will be Elemental Armaments for a chance to spawn solar elemental wells from solar weapon kills, Elemental Ordnance to spawn a well when getting a kill with your grenade, Explosive Well Maker to spawn another well when your enemies are killed with explosive damage by things like a Firefly perk on a weapon or your abilities, and Melee Well Maker to spawn another elemental well from powered melee final blows, which will be from your hammer as you have infinite throwing hammers. Pretty excessive on the elemental well spawning, but we'll be using those wells on Font of Might to grant us a bonus to weapon damage of the same element type, that being our solar weapons. Now Font of Might, it will give us a 25% damage increase to our solar weapons for 10 seconds, but this stacks with our exotic armor for an additional 35% at max stacks, as well as debuffs like a tether or a seasonal artifact mod. So it is pretty effective when pairing with solar weapons, and even better in Master Lost sectors where a solar burn modifier is present, as it will make solo runs a lot easier. For the normal mods, you'll want to use your ammo finder mod for your heavy weapon, your champion mods, which would be an overload auto or SMG, or an anti-barrier bow or scout rifle for Season 16. Then your damage resistant mod and your reserves, as well as your scavenger mod for your legs. Then for your class, I've left this one open for any new seasonal mods that you'll get, and for the stats, I would go with Discipline and Resilience. But here's what the artifact setup looks like for Season 15, so definitely a perfect build to have ready for Season 16. Moving on to number 2, we have the Warlock Stasis turret build featuring Eye of Another World. This one is by far my favourite build to use in things like a Grandmaster Nightfall or in Master Lost Sector, as it makes life so much easier when you can infinitely freeze enemies like champions while you're dealing with other adds in the area. Another way you'd use this build is start by throwing a charged stasis grenade, which will form into a turret. This will then slow and freeze enemies while creating stasis shards. These shards will act like elemental wells when picked up, giving you charge light, ability energy, health and overshields, and a bunch of other benefits. It's great in all types of endgame content, as you'll be able to consistently have a stasis turret placed down at all times before the previous one expires. So the setup of this build will be ideally an Arbalist and an energy weapon that can deal with overloads or unstoppable champions. If Arbalist isn't an option, you'll want to use an auto rifle, bow, scout rifle or SMG to deal with your champions. And the same with your energy, but Arbalist is strongly recommended as it will deal with anti-barrier champs as well as all shields in the game, essentially covering everything if you are a solo player. For the subclass aspects, you'll want to run Bleak Watcher to get a stasis turret, and Glacial Harvest, which will create the stasis shards when freezing adds. For the fragments, you'll want Whisper of Torment, Whisper of Durance, Whisper of Shards, or Whisper of Refraction, and then Whisper of Rhyme. With this setup, you'll make more use of your stasis abilities, but the exotic you'll use is Eye of Another World. This highlights priority targets and improves the regen speed of your grenade, melee, and Rift, which is a passive stat increase, and this stacks with your stats even beyond 100, which is good to make your melee and grenade cooldowns even faster. For the mods, we're running Elemental Shards, so the shards picked up count as elemental wells, stasis ones to be specific. Then we'll use elemental charge to become charge light when picking them up, spawned by freezing enemies with our turret. We'll also use Well of Restoration to grant us additional energy to our ability that has the lowest energy, and we'll use those charge light stacks on protective light to gain 50% damage reduction against adds when our shields are destroyed. For your normal mods, you can go with your ammo finder for your heavy weapon, grenade kickstart to get more energy when you throw down your turret, along with your champion mods if needed, your damage resistant mods with your reserves, and then your ability cooldown mod for your legs. For your class, you can slot on any new seasonal mods that you have and make those slight adjustments if needed, but for your stats, max out Discipline and Recovery. I also forgot to mention, but you can use Aegis Scepter if you really want to, although it may be less effective in endgame PvE, but here is your artifact setup for this one, and if you do want a full in-depth guide for this season setup, see the card section in the top right of this video. Now in first place, being one of the best builds in the game that works with not just 1 or 2 seasons, but every season in the game regardless of changes, is the Titan Thundercrash build. Now I would have had the Hunter's Infinite Invisibility build, along with the Warlock's Controverse Hold build in the top 3, but they are Void subclasses and will be getting a huge rework in Witch Queen for Void 3.0, so it will be pointless making a build for them now when they're going to be having those huge changes. Now the Thundercrash build will allow you to completely obliterate everything in your path. You'll be able to melt bosses and champions, and overall have one of the best DPS builds in the game as a solo player. This build is perfect for doing things like a solo Master Lost Sector or a Nightfall. What I love most about this build is that you can change the setup easily for about 5 different variants of the build to suit the activity that you're playing. Usually I'd recommend using Taking Charge to become Charger Light from Master Orbs, but with the nerf coming we'll have a different approach to this. So the way you'll use this build is run up to an adult champion and finish them using a finisher. This will spawn 2 Arc Elemental Wells, and then picking those up will give you 4 stacks of Charger Light, in which you will then use for the mod of your choice. There are quite a few different variants, so let's get straight into the setup. Starting with the loadout, you can go with your preference, but I'll try and stick to the seasonal meta or the best DPS weapons like currently a Cartesian Fusion and a 1k Voices or Sleeper. But for something that works good regardless is the Gjallarhorn or any rocket launcher, and use the Argent Ordnance mod to buff its damage. If you want to maximise your super energy gains, you can use a Bad Juju instead, but with the subclass we will be using the Arc Thundercrash with the Cuirass of the Fallen Star exotic, as this increases the Thundercrash's damage, which is effective against almost everything in the game and is perfect for solo players. For our base build setup, you'll want to use the Overcharge Wellmaker mod. This will allow you to spawn 2 Arc Elemental Wells when you defeat an enemy with a finisher. On top of this, you'll use Elemental Charge to become Charger Light when picking up those wells. If you are using an Arc subclass with Supercharged, you'll be able to get 4 stacks instantly, but if you're using another subclass you'll get 2, but with this build you'll want Supercharged as the next mod, so that we can hold a total of 4 stacks. And then lastly, we'll use those stacks on the mod of your choice. For more survivability, go with Protective Light. For more ammo like Infinite Fusion Ammo with the Null Composure, go with Extra Reserves. For faster supers, go with Energy Converter. And for more damage with rockets, go with Argent Ordnance 3 times by replacing Supercharged. As for your normal mods, you want to slot on your Ammo Finder for your DPS weapon, your Champion mods and your Gauntlets, your Damage Resistant mod along with your Ammo Reserves for your chest, and your Scavenger mod for your legs. As for the class, you can slot on any new seasonal mods to enhance this build further, like for Season 15. We have the Particle Deconstruction mod, so slot on something similar that you'll get with a new artifact. But lastly, I'd max out Discipline for faster barricades, which are useful in endgame PvE, and again, here's the artifact setup for Season 15 currently. So guys, these are your top 3 builds this season, and the top 3 builds to use in Season 16 or Witch Queen. As always, like all my top 3 build videos, if you want to see the full in-depth setup for each, you can view those cards on screen or links in the description. But for now, give these ones a try and maybe check out my Season 16 prep guide for everything you need to prepare, and be sure to leave a rating, comment, sub and share, and do give me your top 3 builds for this season down below in the comments. For now, thank you all so much for tuning in. It's been a mega long season, but it's finally over. And guys, stay tuned, because we're going to have a crazy Witch Queen DLC with a lot of new builds to come. So until then, have a good one, and I'll see you soon.